Hello everybody. Today's talk is a very interesting one. I think it's one of the most interesting ideas that can come to the human being right now. The topic of today is future selves and unknown moments. Before I begin, guys, let us not dive into any concept and let us just be where we are. Right now, I am walking in a park and I've got a drink in my hand. As one observes where self is, they begin to see that the self seems to simultaneously be equal to the opening of your eyes, which is projecting a world. The minute we open our eyes, we are fixated in an association through an individually conscious manner. So there is individual consciousness. Now, when there is individual consciousness, man has segmented his sense of time, and so we have a past, we're in the present, and there's a future. But you must begin to see that when you as a being, as an existential intelligence, begin paying attention outside of the segmentation, in other words, before spitting it up into three pieces, you're just seeing that there's just one moment. And when you're trying to go, just like how with the same enthusiasm that many scientific discoveries were done, to see how thought is being thought of, you see that experience is not just based on form. It seems to be the forms we see are based on our experience. So when man begins to see that there is an unknown quality to the potential of his projection, what that means is you're doing so many creative things throughout the day that your mind is not convinced that you are this, because you can project so much. So man is not here to try to find out what it is based on a creator and creation dynamic for too long, but to see where they meet, and it's always within him. It is always here. So what that means is if there was a city in my pocket and we were all in that city and somehow I was also walking, you would see it's as if what is within me, literally within my pocket, the whole intelligence is guided by the greater intelligence I am, the person walking, in which the city is in my pocket, So you begin to see that it's not about more the objects that are here to suggest truth. The objects are not intelligent. What that means is, a man could go in a room and then begin to say, okay, let's look for life. But he's not going to see anything. So we are in so many mental rooms that we are not even able to acknowledge the human being properly. We have problems such as racism, sexism, and many other sorts of problems which are coming from a lack of existential responsibility to love life as it is. Because a person who is having an individual intention, what that means is if you're like, I'm going to go be only this, it's as if you're ignoring all the amount of time you're given in this life to explore your opportunity within the present moment, your opportunity of how you're manifest. It's a very phenomenal moment right now because Western thought is recognizing it needs to change its approach because it can't ignore the experience of multidimensionality. What that means is we can't ignore the rotations of the earth. You can't ignore the cyclical changes of night and day. Some of man's inspirations, as suggested by his world, are never anybody's. When there is a recognition that there is an intelligence beyond body, it's not just a statement that you just accept to be true. See, truth is not something that some person says and others are like, yes, that is true. You know, it's not, it's not that kind of manner. Truth is the awareness that when man opens his eyes, from the minute he opens his eyes, he is considering what he is seeing. And so it's like that moment when I'm asking you a question, you're stopping all of life to see all the movements you've seen, to see what you can say to me. And you'll tell me probably the Starbucks is that way, you know, or the coffee shop is that way. Something, you know. So it's very important to really see that when time is not segmented, individual consciousness has no consideration to the individual. Do you see? Not that it's considering, not that it's doing some things or considering some things or listening to some beings to then do something. Do you see? It is being aware of the apparatus, and it's putting the apparatus down perhaps as gently as the Zen master would put down his cup and acknowledge the emptiness, which allows him to have another drink. What that means is this life seems to be a game of interpretation, and we thought man was at war. No, the ideas of man are at war. The postulates and axioms of what man is supposed to be are at war. And you begin to see that the only way is for new entities to develop. What that means is man's separations, in acknowledging how they are each separate, become one holistic spectrum and become one moment of a collective glance. You see, there's two ways for humanity to collectively know itself, it seems. One is through the stillness of the world, and one is through the movement of the world. And the observance of both of these suggest to some degree where manifestation is coming into your consideration. So you need to ask yourself something very phenomenal. And you need to see that you have been given memory as a self-aware being. And this sense of memory is what is keeping time for you based on how you're considered. It's like, I'm remembering what time it is, right? Look at how we're speaking about it. So, is it actually that memory is just an act of manifestation? So just like how that tree has just given out a leaf, similarly, memory is a manifestation out of what is this human being, let's say. What is this life form? When you see the life form becoming aware of its form in grander ways, it sees that it cannot base its truth on a limited state of consciousness when it knows it is of a higher one. What that means is if you really know yourself, you know you're in the right place. Regardless of where that is. It's just you are placed in existence. And that is a very cosmic sense of comfort. When life is observed, intelligence leaves out of being interpreted by a sense of individuality. And as you trust the different individualities, instead of fearing them or making something greater than what it has to be, you will see that you will not conceive the consideration of the concept of an illusion. Through state of being, you're handling your problems by changing your state of being, not just going to individually handle the problem. What that means is, if you want to handle the problem without being aware to your state of being, it would be very one-dimensional. It's as if like you'd be like, it would be similar to that, the self-help section in the bookstore. you know? Where you're seeking it from a terminal based. You're like, something, give me answer. You're just looking, you know? But when you begin to see that if you just went into a moment where there was nobody here, you would have to do a lot of the things that life is providing for you as a crutch. When that awareness comes into your mind, seriousness is there. So it doesn't matter how much your life has been, when you can conceive and really see suffering and pain, you get a pretty good idea of what is a state above that. And you know, right now we're not trying to suddenly, you know, change the world completely into the happiest place on earth in our lifetime. We're in a sense here through our presence and based on what is real to us to walk around and in a sense through our being do in such a way where the whole environment is in a sense growing, you know? Just like how trees are helping man, the life form of man is also helping trees. Even though it seems that we're really not, but as a life form, when you acknowledge yourself as a natural phenomenon, there is no artificial characters in the games of thought. You're finding the seriousness that is telling you to always be playful with reality, and you're finding that playfulness, which in its playfulness, it never forgets why it's here. Because playfulness is a good method with self-awareness. Without self-awareness, it would be an incapability because you are not exploring. And so, greater exploration requires an ability for you to accept what is first in front of you. So before trying to go seek enlightenment and meditation, just acknowledge and accept everything in your moment. Do not walk in places where your mind is creating discomforts for you. Don't have too many ideas about your state of being, because as a multidimensional being, the way you transition is in a sense not just by you. The collective intelligence is what trust even means in this world. And of course, guys, all of this leads to you coming into a moment where you're acknowledging life more than the ideas you have on life. And when that happens, there is a feeling of emptiness. If you're not feeling empty, then you are taking something too seriously, and I would recommend you to go do something playful and come back and look at the depth. Because when you look at deep things too long and you're serious and you're trying to find something, you'll get tired quick. You gotta look at deep concepts very playfully. What that means is when you have to cross that rope across the Niagara Falls, you know, and you have to just walk across that rope, you know, there are two ways of doing it. One, as if you feel as if you're gonna fall every second. Two, as if you're playful and you feel like you're walking to the grocery store or something, you know, while you're doing that kind of stuff. Your ability is beyond your human idea, for you are conceiving your idea, and that intelligent observer and experiencer of the object of experience is in a different space than this considered space and time that man has. And when I say it's in a different space, it's not that it's in a different space. It's actually in a place where there is no definitions, but to us, because it's a transition, we're saying it's a different space. Do you see? Because some things about the fabric of reality being elusive at times is that because we're not convinced, the hologram keeps going. You know, it's just like the fractal aspect of the world, it makes a fractal illusion. Gosh, it's as if man's confusion, man is confused on some level, that ant is confused on some level, you know. That planet is confused on some level, you know. You see yourself within all those things that you're considering lesser or greater. And so when it comes to the concept of time, the sense of a future self is simply suggesting two ideas. And Mr. Within will talk about both of them, one of them which is completely irrelevant to him, and one of them which is completely relevant. In other words, I've experienced some things from it. You see, guys, a mystic is a being who is exploring reality, and he's like, all right, before anybody calls me anything, before anybody gives me a name, I'm going to take my own look first. And so the mystic is that being who sits down to observe reality directly from his experience before a lot of references are just thrown in its face. As space and time is observed, you will see that there will be moments, just like how they said when you were having fun, time flies by, where your sense of time and space as if fades because your attention has gone into something, you know? And then you kind of see how your sense of time and space has been hollow, so you are working with your consideration, and you begin to see why you've considered, and so you might not have a reason. This has happened to me many times, where I've asked myself, why did I have to do this? And I said, there was no reason. Literally, there was no reason for me to do that action, you know? And so suddenly all anger dissipated. All agitation dissipated by the simple wonder to know why something is here. And when you question that, you immediately get an existential wind of humility, in a sense, blown at you. You begin to see that regardless of any action that you have done as a sense of an actor here, it has all been life. It is a very interesting thing when you notice that who can judge you in 2,000 years, 3,000 years? Who can stop you? You do know? There's no commentary in this world that needs to create a depressed and stressful sense of self. Like you really don't need it. If you are a very creative person, and if you could just channel that into your artwork, you'd probably have a very nice art portfolio, you know? But recognize that it's very important. Many people don't really have problems. And there are some people who know they don't have problems, but because the way they've been raised and the way they've been conditioned, they are constantly seeing a problem. Like they know they don't have a problem. They know they're comfortable. They know they have had moments of divinity in their solitude. You know, it's just conditioning was only for the condition. And you, my beloved being, must move beyond the condition. And as the sense of time changes, if I was to speak about future selves, I would say, one way of thinking about future selves is, oh, this is me now, and there is something in the future version of me, right? That's the sense of thinking about it. So it's a very abstract concept. This is when you are thinking of it as an idea. But if you are just remaining here as an experiencer, as just being, not someone who's doing something to figure something out, someone who's just being to then see what is done, right? You begin to kind of notice that you don't need segmentation of time because you're not convinced by it. Sometimes, it's as if you observe it, you know you are beyond it. That is why you know you are beyond it, because you observe it. And there comes a moment where your focus goes from the object of experience, in other words, one body in your moment being the only thing, to how your whole moment is the intelligence, not just certain aspects of it, which are objectively being considered based on our practice, the human instrument. So once you recognize that the individual sense of consciousness always had an ability to move beyond that individuality, it is collective. And you see that based on the being you are, this ratio suggests how much you are limited. It is in a sense of divine attention of a greater existential intelligence to an aspect of existential intelligence within itself. What that means is just like how our veins are a highway for ourselves, this world is a highway for man. And so we are in the vein of a greater aspect of the cosmos. We may be small, we may be individual, we may look around and see nothing here, but it is not all about an individual search. A sense of future self will become simply how you have trust in the next moment to be as it is. It is an intelligence thing in regards to what your moment is. So, to simply say this, think of it in this way. You are here, then you look at the mirror and recognize yourself as an individual, and as your self-awareness is developing, you use ideas, and these ideas are externally projected to be kept. What that means, omniscience didn't have hands, and when people asked what that meant, they didn't understand why there never was a reach in regards to moving beyond that individual framework. Visualize yourself and the self and senses of yourself you had yesterday. You'll begin to see, as you're in the present moment, it's as if by remembering that somewhere in your awareness and abstraction of being aware of thought, there is the simultaneous experience of something happening yesterday and a simultaneous experience of you right now experiencing something and that being there. When you begin seeing that the awareness to experience is suggesting different worlds are within one another, then the future self is recognized to be a consciousness beyond the limitations of now. So man's greater freedom into liberation in one path, which is more real to Mr. Within, is to collectively see it as that. So visualize that your future self is so evolved that it is the whole world. It is your whole moment of being. And when that connection is made, you become centered, just like how the center of an infinity symbol. What's just the point? Just a simple point. Humanity is a presence with an infinite presence. And that means that when there is a door, there is simply two decisions you can make. And as you see these two decisions, once you have made one or you have confronted the other side of your spectrum, you never had to be lost in the spectrum. Do you know? Once you've been to Wonderland once, you don't need to go there again. You know, unless on certain occasions. And what that really means is that the sage will begin to see that the wisdom he seeks is the voice of existence that he will hear in his silence and stillness, rather than the turmoil caused by words and terminology. There are some teachers who are at different states of being and awareness. Some people feel right now that their greatest contribution is to get a role, and as a certain role, say certain things. You see many people beginning to take a stand for their truth and make it more accessible to others by communicating it. When such moments are seen, the unseen is everything that is here. You thought that you could judge somebody. You thought you could be judged. But all of these are identifications kept in a certain glance. Your eyes can change instantly. And think of how your focus has many times changed. You've suddenly become hyper-focused when an emergency's happened. You know, when something's happened, you have to move quick, and suddenly it's as if the whole world was projecting a different sense of you. Throughout my life, there has been certain progressions and there have been certain phases of reality and different levels of me trusting my reality and that changing and having doubt. Throughout the years, as it was going, before I had the awareness that I have now, I knew of a sense of a longing within me of a greater existential comfort. But I wasn't seeing it. I wasn't seeing the comfort, so I felt like I was always in that room outside where the party was, you know, as if you're in the neighbor's house, you know. So you need to kind of see that when your touch is not satisfying you, it's because it's not really your touch. When you begin to see that if you don't authentically search for the meaning of your truth and explore what consciousness means for the human experience, you will wonder of worlds which you did not even need to enter, but just observe how they were kept. You're not here to constantly play better games, you know? You see this winning attitude people have, you know how our society has competition. Guess what? In all of life there has been competition. But there has been a competition also in states of awareness. You would go see these ancient wisdom traditions, and if you were to go see, for example, the Buddha's work, you would see that it's as if people were forgetting the physical and they were realizing that it's all about how you're aware to the life that is here. Not just what you think life is and you just running forever into a void which you're always thinking if you don't know what's going to happen next. You can acknowledge you're not knowing with trust or without trust, but to do it with trust means that you are willing to allow life to say things it has never said before to you. When you experience truly a novel moment, it cannot be shaped. Novelty is of the shapeless intelligence of the being. It's of that aspect of it. And that shapeless intelligence is the leading to the collectivity. You know, some men look around this life and they don't have any opinions. But when they go see the opinions of others, it's as if they are the emptiness which can see something others can't. And what that may suggest is that there have been many beings throughout this world, but many have feared death. When you talk about death, many people are like, oh, no, but at the same time, they're comfortable to watch it in movies, and they're watching death constantly in movies. But you know, don't talk about death, man. Don't talk about life and death. Don't get deep, man. But let's go watch that action movie where hundreds of people are dying with one machine gun, you know? So it's crazy to me. And you will see that when your fear of death goes away, also your fear of living goes away as well. Because when Mr. Within saw many people fearing death, he knew that's exactly what the human being needed to study. Your fear is the sign that you really need to look at what's making you fear, whatever, you know? Consciousness is not lost when it's not found. When you don't have to be found in a certain way, when you don't have to be happy in a certain way, when you don't have to be arrogant enough to create a certain framework of reality that's not working for you, you must take a responsibility not as a human being, not as, for example, Bob or whatever your name is. You must take a responsibility as existentially self-aware life intelligence. So before you can judge yourself, there is something here, and observe that, and you will learn beyond memory. And so you would see that all your sense of guidance, whether you are perceiving guides or whether you're perceiving other forms of manifestation, because you're paying attention to how you're seeing, you are seeking for the absolute truth rather than just a more nicer truth. Mr. Within is saying, I want to show you a mirror, because it is only you who can break yourself. It is only you who can tell yourself to move from walls that have been hindering you for years. And you must have the knowing that you have the capacity and ability. The human being is not here just to, forget itself. The human being is here at the most crucial time. You might not be recognizing it, but it is as if very playfully and poetically said, celestial generals are coming to this plane, for there is a war with ideology. There's a war with terminology, and not a war that has a victor, but a war that there is illusions created. When beings see that there are walls here that are made from the illusion, when the mother and the father of the cosmos begin to see how the child is not utilizing something properly or is using something to injure itself, do you know how instant their intention comes to guide that aspect of existence? And when I say the parents of the cosmos, this is the collective consciousness. This is the collective intelligence. This is regardless if you're an orphan or not, regardless if everything lets go of you, including your ideas, including your thoughts, including your world, you are still remaining here. And that which stands here is what the mystic's eyes are truly made of. It is the emptiness of reality, where the edge of your truth is your truth. Where transcendence is always within transcendence, and guilt and worry and an apocalypse that came too early was never the actuality of an experiencer that could not be touched. Your future self is your guidance from a collective intelligence. You will see. Many people are not understanding, but think of it this way. You as a self-aware being, just like how that tree is again growing and about to give fruit at that time of a season, the human being right now, the way it's growing is through self-awareness. Its self-awareness has created infinite spectrums, so the spectrums are now becoming self-aware. So what happens as an experiencer when you've constantly been in, and I don't want to say constantly because it's not really up to us to linearize it to say that it's my past life or my future life, even though on some level it's personal to you, but you don't need to talk about it. You begin to kind of see that hindrance was your definition, and so was the concept of lack, so was the concept of incapability. Man is able. It is a very playful time to be alive. Utilize the technology of playfulness, and that does not mean don't take life seriously. That means you will handle life with the most efficient and compassionate seriousness required to do your tasks, but everything that you're doing is not coming to a thought. It's playfully just happening. It's as if, you've walked somewhere where you have infinite freedom, and so you don't need to be chained to your senses of time or how your senses are even sensing. You are beyond the frameworks, because you can always get out of the museum. You can just leave, It's as if mankind right now is, as consciousness, walking into this museum where he's like this individual body looking around, and he's like, oh my God, look at this world, look at the world of this painter, look at the world of this painter. And so he's seeing so much multidimensionality. But once he realizes he can get out of the museum, you begin to see that truth never had to be a big deal, and playfulness meant that clarity knew what it was doing, so don't worry. For when life comes from life, you have always lived well. For when life is life, there can be no death. you will see that it is in actuality the unknown moments of your experience that are teaching you the most. And an unknown moment is one that is basking in novelty, so you are seeing what's here and you're always seeing more. You know, it's as if you're not situating yourself as someone who knows things, you're situating yourself as someone who doesn't know things, and so you're constantly seeing the different things that can be known, and it's like the consciousness stream is much faster. For the state of being is being educated, not just the object in which the state of being is considering. What that means, there's a difference compared to you as an engineer designing something, let's say making the blueprint of something, compared to actually going and making the thing. Do you see? Imagine now, for your level of education in this world, you need to be able to be self-aware in a sense of multidimensionality. So observe life, get comfortable with how you are seeing your dimensions of experience, reality are real for you, and then walk comfortably, because there's no reason not to. Align yourself with clarity and with greater vision. That's simply it. And greater vision includes, one, you being introduced to new ideas that are your new ideas, and also you to being observant and trusting life. Because this is not an individual thing. If you're an individual, there will be a game. If you're not an individual, you're the whole world. And so the whole world turns as it does. You see, you always could smile. To be honest, guys, I really feel there's nothing else I need to say about future selves at this point. But it is, of course, a very interesting concept. The idea came to me before I even could find words for it. So what that means is I've kind of you are your future self, so don't segment the intelligence, but trust its segmentation even though it's seen. Trust life because you are projecting it. Trust reality because it's becoming real for you and it's real based on your sense of conception. Trust your senses because you are sensing. Trust your body because you are aware of your body. Trust you because you are aware that your self-awareness can see itself as an idea, but also as that moment that just keeps everything still and enjoys the air. And also, never forget the profundity of your moment, which is something you must cultivate. What that means is Mr. Within is not just here talking about inspiration. Inspiration has many levels based on your state of consciousness. What that means is the guru who became a guru never decided by himself. And let me tell you why. Because it wasn't the idea that was teaching it. So many gurus actually become existential teachers when they no longer need to be anything in this life. They don't need to be a guru, they don't need to be an idea, they don't need to do something to be something, they are something, and so it is done. And so thought is just made aware of as your existence is expressing it. The light bulb doesn't need to try to give light, it just needs to be turned on. Your state of awareness needs to be grounded in a certainty that is originating within your awareness, your source of what truth is. What that means is that it is only an ignorant man that sees a child and thinks that's a child. Because sometimes I've seen children, and of course children are the most important beings of this world. More important than any being in this world is the children that are to be born. Remember this. For that is where mankind gets his kindness from, in preserving his greatness of experience. Now, you as a being, through your own sense of how comfortable you are with your walk, find yourself again within a moment where self-awareness is being thought about, but then you're like, who's thinking? And so you stop. And it's as if like that moment where you're not scratching your head, but it's as if you no longer need to point at anything. When your origin story suddenly has the story part go away, you're just left with an origin, which is the awareness of now. Reality is what you need to study, not what they're teaching you in schools or in certain books or in certain whatever. And you will see that a sense of a future self becomes real for you when you don't go looking for it, but something in your life takes your intuition and synchronicity to such a level. In other words, your intuition and synchronicity and everything that's happening in your flow of life in this consciousness stream that you are, you suddenly begin to see that there never was a synchronicity, there never was an intuition, and you as a being are taking more responsibility, existential responsibility for your unknown. And so a being who feels that there's a future sense or feels that they have guides or something, they are actually advancing. They are taking more existential responsibility for the unknown to then bring more from the unknown. Humility balanced lack of clarity at times. But unauthentic humility was its own trap. And that simply means if you're not aware why you're doing something, then you will not really receive that which is being worked for. So I want to give you a scenario, guys, and I want you to think about this. Let us say you have woken up in the morning and you're sitting on your porch and you're just looking at some awesome scenery, natural scenery in front of you. And you're just thinking what to do. Now, before you do anything or think of an errand, just visualize for a second that what you want to do throughout the day, obviously, is something that gives you something more valuable, right? So many people right now are making money, right? They're seeking financial abundance in that way. They're making certain things happen. They're going through a certain path, right? When you begin to observe this, if you think about the reward of your action throughout your day, before you go throughout your day, you want to know, how am I receiving my reward? I mean, there's one level where I'm gaining something in other words, you're becoming aware of the cause that you're putting in life, but how are you receiving it? What is the effect? And if you think about that, you begin to see that the greatest way you can know your cause is by being very observant to its effect. So if we are curious to know what is the cause of our intelligence, we must see the effect of it, which is mankind and its questions. And as all of these are observed in the moment, cause and effect were part of the same coin. You are the intelligence that is beyond the sophistication of the problem and the sophistication of the answer. It is simple being. And of course, man is developing. You know, it's like, regardless of how many degrees people get from schools, we don't know many things. Right? We are certain in things that we can assure and compare, but beyond technologies of comparison, it seems that direct experience was the peak of the reward. The exploration of what consciousness is. For truth never came to see you so that you could say it was right or wrong. Truth was like that friend that came up to you and for a moment just looked at you and said, hey man, look at yourself. and left. That is truth. And you will see that when it's a reception of how your moment is present in this life, that profundity is beyond terminology that can be judged through different terms. The madness of this world is very gentle. And so fear is the creation of your excitement based on your environment in a way where you were just more incapable in regards to your external projection. Be aware of your multidimensionality and explore this in your own way, and then come and work with others. Because a renaissance must require many new artists constantly pouring out their new ideas and their new artworks, but at the same time being aware of what else is being done, so they are collectively building anew as well. So man has the task right now in many of his cultural movements to begin creating new senses of cultural development. And how has culture evolved? From the human being. So the way you live is suggesting how culture is evolving. And so it seems that many bridges are being made by many children being born from very unique cultures coming together. Globalization can be seen as freedom for the beings who are living in the present, and beings who are living, in a sense, in the future. But for beings in the past, globalization could be an apocalypse. What that means is that I don't know how my grandfather's grandfather would react to my iPhone 6. He'd probably be like, whoa, that's like, he'd probably think I'm an alien, you know? So it's very important, it's very important to really see that, not an alien actually, he would think I'm from the future. We need to really see, guys, that in this life process, there is a processing of an individual association in regards to who you are constantly, of what it knows and what it doesn't know. But at the same time, you're simultaneously being presented in a platform, in an existential platform where you're observing all these changes comfortably. And if you've had deja vu moments, don't be surprised that you have been in that conception before, and that is why that moment is going smooth. What that means is sometimes we think that we only have one reality, but if you become sensitive, sometimes I've seen, for example, certain points throughout the talks that I do, there are some moments where I'm talking about something where I see within my experience, it's as if a bunch of realities simultaneously at the same time are coming up with that outcome. Do you know? It's as if the association within the awareness to the present moment is the ability to work with any sense of segmentation within any sense of segmentation. Man has not found his greatest brush yet. But once the heart of existence is seen to be clearly beating, you will see that the greatest brush was your whole moment and the intelligence within. I hope this talk has served you. Trust life. For a wise man once said, you have two options in this life, you know? You can either trust it or not trust it. You can either trust the forms and stuff that is found in your moment of being, or you cannot trust it. And let me tell you, it's better to trust it. Because once you trust, you begin to see how reality is being received by you is more open and integrative, so your experiences are going towards a more sense of a freedom, more sense of a self-awareness that is knowing before it needs to know. And of course, there's the other side of the spectrum as well. Where there can be a distance measured to such a degree that rulers have turned into walls. Measurement may come to you as a blockade in the creativity of the potentials of what life is. But regardless of how manifestation is kept, you are here, and very simply said, you are here. Trust life, trust your guidance, trust all that you see, and above all, trust your vision. For it is what is carrying you forward. And you will see that all future selves belong to the observance of a self beyond time. All senses of self do. For individual reference is very transparent for use. And when immortality comes, you would see mortality's truth. Much blessings and namaste.